In an alternate near future where humans and androids coexist, a family struggles after their robotic helper malfunctions. Would their quest to repair their mechanical friend be successful? Or will their companion remain offline for good? Hello, and welcome to our channel. After Yang is a 2021 drama and sci-fi film made by a US entertainment company called A24, whose main plotline revolves around grief and how to deal with it. Let's check it out.
Taking themselves for a photo shoot, the Flemings invite their adoptive android son, Yang, who holds dear his beloved camera pointing towards the family. The Flemings are a multi-ethnic family consisting of Jake, Kira, and Mika. Yang serves not only as a robotic companion for the young girl to establish a connection with her culture and heritage, but also acts as her big brother. Their bonding exercises include competing in dance-offs, engaging in Chinese cultural lessons, and other things families of four do. But Yang, whose species is called the Techno-Sapiens, being remotely human in appearance only, fails to boot up one morning, upsetting his little sister. Refusing to go to school in protest, Mika begs for her father to have him patched up. Despite having disagreements with his wife on how to properly address Yang's situation, Jake consults his friend and neighbor George if he knows anyone who could deal with repairing him. George advises that Yang be taken to a technician he knows who could fix him up for cheaper cost, and if Jake is to abide by Yang's warranty, the company responsible for his creation, Brothers and Sisters Inc., would have him replaced for a new model, something that doesn't sit right with Jake. The warranty, however, could also be referred to certified reseller Second Siblings, and Jake plans on taking Yang there, only to find out the place has been replaced by an aquatic pet store. Time is of the essence because if Yang fails to boot up any longer, the flesh parts of his structure will begin to decompose, making his repair more urgent than ever. Without any other choice, Jake takes the android to Russ, George's crazed and conspiratorial technician. Suggesting to break open Yang's core to access him further, Jake warns that it would violate privacy laws, which Russ laughingly discards as yet another corporate ploy by Brothers and Sisters, baselessly accusing the company of having spyware in its products. Yang's uncertain condition agitates Mika towards her father's indecisiveness on what to do next. Later that night, Kira tackles with her husband how to fully take care of Yang, to which she suggests that a replacement is out of the question due to the high expense that already went into the android. Their involvement in Mika's childhood should replace Yang's, as Kira argues, because their connection with their own child is minimal compared to the brother that acted in her stead. Facing Yang's former responsibility to be theirs is too much for both to take, especially Jake, but lacking in it is what drove them to have him to begin with, and dealing with his being out of order is just the consequence of them not directly confronting their parenthood of Mika. This issue goes back to one time when Mika, accompanied by Yang, was being driven home from school. She recalled how her schoolmates made fun of her for having parents that weren't of the same race, likewise how herself was an anomaly to the ethnic soup that was their family.
Discerning the nature of her biological and adoptive parents, Yang introduced her to the practice of grafting, where differing plant branches are attached to a bigger plant to create a symbiotic relationship between them while creating something entirely new. This example showed that even if all of them were different, their family being whole is what matters more. But maintaining Mika's origins, that matters too.
The next morning, as Mika is taken to school, Kira heads out for work and Jake drives himself to where Yang is. A blonde woman sneaks into the Fleming household. Her purposes are unknown, but something drives her there looking for something, or someone. Meanwhile, at Russ's, the technician detects what he thinks is spyware within Yang, and Jake insists on knowing what it is, but Russ doesn't have the equipment needed to read its contents or even tell what it is. Desperate, he refers Jake to a different person while retaining Yang under his care to not have him deteriorate if Jake takes him out with him prematurely. Driving himself to a museum, he almost gets kicked out of the premises just for having associations with Russ and his indoctrinated views of brothers and sisters, deeming him too much of a liability risk in Jake's transaction, until he brings out the component taken out of Yang to be observed by the museum's curator, Cleo. Indeed, Russ has some validity in his claims when it turns out that the object is a memory bank, installed as an experimental addition for Yang's type of android for Techno-Sapiens, to be understood more before the program got shut down for privacy violations. The memory bank houses clips of what Yang experienced before malfunctioning, and Cleo insists that these could be researched further and be useful assets for the museum's collection. Video calling Kira after leaving for a restaurant, the distance between him and Kira become more apparent aside from the fact that they're communicating remotely. Eating ramen while they discuss, the substance of their conversation cannot surface beyond small talk about Yang or Mika without any depth and any emotion but cold, distant indifference. Along with its instructions, Cleo hands a glasses-like reader that is compatible with Yang's memory bank for Jake to view, only upon the agreement that he brings Yang's unresponsive body to the museum the following day. Arriving home, he is greeted with Mika's exceptional singing singing of Mitsuki's cover of Guide, Yang's favorite song, and his wife's apathy in everything but work. Kira's husband doubts the wellness of their marriage, but she's way too eager to dismiss his concerns about Yang's condition. Inputting the coordinates needed to have access to his android son's memories, he finally sees with his own eyes what Yang has lived through before he broke down. As if his memories are a galaxy filled with stars, with each one a recollection, and each recollection a clip, Jake selects what he wants to view, and what he sees fascinates him in terms of how close a human-like life Yang lived as a human invention. But what he sees primarily isn't what he expects. Playing the files within the memory bank, through the reader, he sees a blonde girl in front of Yang. He spent enough time with the girl to have significant memories with her, where a prominent one is when he attended a concert with her, where Guide played as the song. Every other memory he sees is of the Flemings, especially that of Mika's infancy up until as recently as the photo shoot before his shutdown. He also notices that Yang tends to look at him and Kira from afar while spending a great deal of his time with Mika, proving Kira's earlier statement. When Jake revisits Russ one last time, the delusional low-cost mechanic demands to know where his former customer's own android is, something that's no longer his business or concern. At the museum, it's been discovered that Russ's tampering with Yang when he tried to hack open his core damaged the android even more, his salvage highly unlikely, making it necessary for Yang to stay at the museum to prevent his decay. It would be bothersome for Jake at this point to continue having his robot son fixed, but he is driven no matter what, and whatever drives him to save him is demonstrative of his humanity, even if it's currently towards an inanimate object. While inside the Flemings' living room, Jake and Yang drink and talk about the nature, taste, and history of tea. What were silly inquiries made by his AI son became meaningful enough to question the very essence of life, the world, and existence itself, all linked through the topic of tea. Tea was everything, and both really loved it, not just exclusively for its flavor.
Whatever drove both into its pure indulgence is beyond mere language, unfit to be fully described by words of mouth for that matter. Of what importance was tea to Yang? If tea was everything to him, what was his cup of tea? And what is Jake's?
Viewing Yang's memories once more prompt Jake to confront the issue of the blonde girl within them, tracking her down by referencing what he knows about her from the files, leading him to a coffee shop where she worked as a barista, but fails to find her there. He ends up finding out who she is through George and his daughter, who claims that she saw the woman inside his house not long ago, likely looking for Yang. Her revelation also states that the woman is a clone named Ada. Androids grasping the concept of human relationships is an astounding discovery for Jake and relays it to Cleo, who later suggests that this information should have Yang put him as an exhibit in her museum. However, a sudden ring of a doorbell at Jake's place forces him to exit his call with the curator and is met with the very girl he's been looking for. As they talk, Ada subtly confirms the relationship she developed with Yang, taking her and Mika to the museum to think that a machine that beheld human emotions, far superior to some humans have, makes the father that carries his sleeping daughter on his shoulder doubt to have an android he considers his son to be displayed as an exhibit for random people to gawk at. This becomes more apparent by the time he drives himself, Mika, and Ada out when the blonde clone tells Jake that she despises what it means to be human, even though Yang himself, before shutting down, constantly egged her about his Chinese heritage and what makes him as such at all. Her existential dread is what makes her hate humanity. Back at home, Kira is puzzled by the number of things Yang has collected over the years, among them being butterflies. She remembers how he told her through Chinese art and philosophy that these creatures represented the flow of change and the end of things. She asked how he would feel if there was something or anything in that very end, only for Yang to tell her that it doesn't really matter that much.
What the caterpillar calls the end, the rest of the world calls a butterfly. After all, his existence matters. It mattered. And Kyra is finally ready to face that fact. Even if Yang didn't mean that much to him, is better than nothing.
His interaction with the clone forces him to play the memory bank's files once more as he finds out that the Flemings aren't the only family Yang tended to. Using the same methods as how he tracked down Ada, he gets a hold of the host family the AI tended to. Though it's the last known living relative, he asks if the recipient's family possessed Yang as their personal android, and indeed they have. Finding out that Yang once served a young boy, but sidetracked into falling in love with the great niece of the boy's mother, the original Ada. Ada the clone may have no idea about the long history she's had with Yang, and it's up to Jake to settle it with her. In that moment of his service, he felt what it's like to be truly human through experiencing love and affection from his host family, and romance with whom he loved, only for tragedy to strike him when the original Ada died in a tragic accident, and seeing her great aunt with his own eyes dying in front of him. Though having learned not only the rich and valuable emotions real people feel, Yang just couldn't truly live beyond what he had been, and Jake has seen what he felt behind the screen. Upon dispensing this to her, the cloned Ada, upon giving closure, finds final peace. Jake's decision is final and resolves with Kira that he isn't taking Yang to Cleo for display, having him decompose at last, but does want to hand her his memories to further the field of research into technosapiens. Mika yearns for her brother, finally speaking Mandarin he taught her as a way to connect her shared heritage with him while refusing to say her goodbyes, and neither does her father. Even though they're one step away from accepting Yang is gone for good, they just can't complete their grievances for him, opting instead to sing his favorite song in honor of him. They have lost a friend, a brother, and a son, but he will be remembered.
Yang's malfunction, as the premise of this film, is to serve as a lesson on dealing with grief. Beginning with Kyra's insistent denial of Yang's unlikely restoration, Mika's anger towards her father when she learns of her big brother's difficult condition, Jake's persistent bargaining to bring the android back to his online state, Ada's heartbreaking depression when she learns of her mechanical lover's deep sleep, and all reaching the conclusion of the Flemings and his romantic partner finally accepting that Yang has just passed on. Besides representing science fiction and a failing marriage, the film uses these to ask a question that is the existential dread currently occupying our minds, especially youth within the modern world that we're living in. It asks, what truly makes us human if something mechanical gets to feel what we feel? Topics like profound wisdom and existential crises may not be everyone's cup of tea, but a metaphysical question exploring the flaws of the human condition can pique the interest of those willing to explore this film's deep-seated subtext. Please subscribe to our channel if you want to be notified when we upload. And don't forget to suggest movies you want us to recap in the future in the comments down below.